Well, good. Hello, everyone. I would say good morning to those on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those on the East Coast, and happy time of day to those joining us globally. Love that this is a virtual out and equal experience where we certainly have option and access to more of you than we've ever seen before, and really happy to have you all here together. It's a shame that we can't be meeting together in a conference room and virtual, in a face-to-face environment, but hopefully we accomplish what we're trying to here virtually. So today what we're really going to talk about is the value and influence of LGBT plus executive leadership councils. We're going to get to introductions for myself and all the speakers you see, but let's just start a little bit with the agenda for today and what we want to accomplish. So we're going to, as I mentioned, introduce all of our panelists. We'll give you an overview of our LGBT plus Executive Leadership Council here at Bank of America, as well as why we formed, who we are, and how we built it. Talk about what we're working to accomplish here in 2020, as well as external messaging and how we are keeping folks engaged during this pandemic. And keys to success. And then we'll end with both a panel and then an audience Q&A. So certainly get your questions ready as we work through this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of my fellow panelists to start our introductions. My co-chair for the Executive Council, Michelle Fullerton.
Well, thank you, Shelley. Let's just go ahead and check that everybody got in okay. You can tell that this is a new technology platform for us. So hopefully we've done everything right. Can everybody try going ahead to the top of the, Kevin McCarthy, hello. It's either a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But maybe try just clicking Q&A and typing a couple of like hellos, we can see and hear you. Everything seems good, kind of questions just to make sure that everything's as we want it to be. And we will keep going. And we'll keep an eye on those questions because we really want this to be informal, really helpful to all of you. The whole reason that we're here is to try to make sure that we're doing I'm seeing all the hellos. Okay, good. Thank you. You've it's funny because my partner is older than me and always jokes that I'm her millennial. And today I really feel like I failed her because I was like the least technical of all of us. Okay. Back to me. See, I'm doing really well. Also, I had to use our Mac, which clearly I never use. All right. Okay. This is me. So we'll start with the fact that I have an accent because by now you've probably realized that and are playing the accent game. So I'm originally from Scotland in the UK. But as it says on the screen here, I live now in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm proud to work for Bank of America for 10 years now. I worked for the bank in London and made my way to New York, and then decided that it would be a great experience to work in the bank's headquarters and made my way to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I actually moved to North Carolina right in the middle of HB2 and all of the discriminatory legislation we had in North Carolina, somewhat deliberately because I decided, what good I could do would be amplified as an out executive in North Carolina, and as well as my leadership roles within the company and my role with Shelley on the LGBT plus Executive Leadership Council. I'm also on the Governor for North Carolina's Council on Inclusion. So have been lucky to serve on that council for a couple of years, actually commission it's called, just to focus on what we can do to make North Carolina more inclusive after that really hurtful piece of legislation that really harmed our community. So been with the bank for 10 years, as I mentioned. I work in diversity and inclusion, and I'm also part of the human resources team. I have a human resource generalist and HR strategy job, as well as my D&I job. So really love working at the company. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed the most is being part of our employee networks and part of our executive council. So looking forward to hearing lots of great questions from you all today around, what your company does already to engage executives, what questions you have for us as executives about how to better engage us, get us involved, and the topic is putting executives to work, and we're really focused on that here at Bank of America and with the council. So with that, I'll hand over to my next presenter.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. So I am Shelley Sereniti. I live in San Francisco, California. So that's what you see behind you right now. I have been with the Merrill Lynch Wealth Management line of business within Bank of America my entire professional career. So I've been with the bank overall for 23 years. I started when I was 19 at really just the beginnings of a career in an entry level position, and have continued to grow within the company, certainly along the lines. And this path of diversity is one that certainly got me here, and that I got more involved in sort of the higher within the organization that I became, and have really been able to see all of the amazing work that we do as an overall company, working through all of that. So as I mentioned, I work within our Merrill Lynch Wealth Management line of business. I work within our financial advisor development program, which are our new financial advisors that we're growing within the company. That's the day job. Many of the gay jobs, co-chairing this amazing LGBT plus Executive Leadership Council, working within our Northern California LGBT plus employee network, our employee resource group, as many of you are familiar with that, as the co-executive sponsor there, and other various roles within the organization. But that's really the background for the diversity piece. And I have been involved, here within the council since we formed back in 2015, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. So I'll turn it over to our next panelist, which I believe is Zach.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome from wherever you are. I saw Italy there, I saw Brazil, Jacksonville, New York. So welcome. We're really excited for you to join us this afternoon here in New Jersey. So my name is Zach Karim. I've been with the bank for about 4 years now. I am currently working in our human resources department, supporting our consumer and small business products organization. As well, I am the enterprise co-chair for our enterprise employee network group. It's a sort of umbrella organization for all our chapters within the bank. And I sit on the executive steering committee as well, led by Shelley and Michelle. And so really excited to be here and have this discussion with everyone. Thanks. Over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Zach. So my name is Mike Block. I use the pronoun he and him. I've been with the bank now for 24 years. I'm actually a second generation Bank of America employee after my mom spent about 20 years at the bank. And I work in governance, overseeing corporate complaints, particularly around coronavirus. So it's quite a busy job right now in my day job. I co-chaired the LGBT employee network for about 5 to 6 years, and am now what's called the Chief Operating Officer for the council, providing support for some of the key programming and initiatives. We'll talk a little bit about my role later, but that's the background on me. And as of course you see here, I come from Los Angeles, California. I'm handing it back to you, Shelley.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And let's talk a little bit about why we formed. And we can go ahead and go to the next slide, Michelle. But this was really a vision. David Thornton, who was one of the co-founders with me that has worked through various strategic positions and been an advisor to us. And really, it was his vision that started this. We had numerous other executive councils within the Bank of America framework back in this 2014, 2015 timeframe. And the thought was, well, let's form one on LGBT plus, and what does that actually look like, and why we wanted to form it. And really what happened were that the out at work executives that we did have were really starting to ask what they could do. They certainly functioned in our employee networks as executive sponsors, and that was more of an advisory role. But everybody felt compelled to do more, especially at that time. the current environment, there were many legislative issues, just like there are today, in states like Indiana, in states like Texas, where there were some very specific legislation out, really sort of questioning LGBT plus human rights, as well as comfort in certain areas. And we wanted to make sure, as executives, certainly to protect our employees, but what were we asking of people and what were we doing for people? What did that all mean? So as I mentioned, this initial steering committee of 10 formed back in November of 2015 was really an idea and can we get this started and what does this look like? And then the council officially kicked off in January of 2016. And what we really did there was simply invited all of our out at work, sort of our self-identified out at work executives to join this council. And we really didn't know what to expect. Was this going to be something that, people across the organization just thought, wow, this is, something else to do and something that I don't have the time to be involved in? Are people going to be engaged? What does this look like? The response was tremendous and was overwhelming. Literally, with the exception of one or two people, everybody joined, our first call to hear about what we were trying to accomplish, and then not only thought it was a good idea, but also wanted to join, wanted to be in good standing. So after we got level set on who was going to be a part of the council and how people wanted to be engaged, we worked to do a few things. And one was developing a mission, right? What were we here to do and what was everybody comfortable with? And then the second was really what are our strategic objectives? What were we trying to accomplish? And what are we trying to accomplish now? So Michelle, if you want to go to the next slide, just a bit of a feel for how we got here. You can see it in front of you, but we did a mission statement, a vision statement, and then got into some of our areas of focus. And these are clearly the ones that we're focusing on today, but they've been similar throughout our time and our legacy and tenure here as a council. So the mission really being visible to all of our employees. I cannot tell you how important that has been for all of us. I think everybody on this panel, everybody within this council has had at least a handful of conversations, if not dozens of them, with other out at work employees throughout our organization that have really come to this realization of, wow, I really can bring my authentic self to work and really appreciate seeing people being out at the executive level. We wanted to be sure to connect with our leadership team and our senior leadership team first and foremost. And now we're at a point where not only have we established ourselves as a council and engaged ourselves, but that senior leadership team continually comes to us and says, what is the voice of the council on this particular issue? Help guide us and help take us through this journey with you on what it is that we are trying to, what we're trying to accomplish, what we need to address. We are very fortunate. We have an amazing senior leadership team here at the bank at all levels, starting with our CEO, Brian Moynihan, on down, that is very engaged, very open to ideas and very open to what we're working through, but they really kept that line of communication open with us as we try to accomplish these things. And then finally, last but certainly not least, was making a difference for our LGBT plus community as well as our clients. So within the LGBT plus community, as you can imagine, just really corporate philanthropy, trying to serve the communities in which we live. But namely for our clients, this was more of, do we have the right lens from our client base on what we're doing here and what we're trying to accomplish, whether it's a prospective client or an existing client. Are we, are training our call center employees in how to properly interact with maybe our transgender clients or prospects? How are we making sure that within our Merrill Lynch Wealth Management line of business that we are serving the specific needs of our LGBT plus client population, and on down the gamut? We can certainly get to some of that in Q&A. And our vision was really to be this globally established and visible LGBT plus executive presence that guides the bank's LGBT plus employee community and customer success. And I just talked a lot about all of that within our mission and how we've been able to accomplish that with our leadership team as well as our presence. Then I'll spend a few minutes here just talking about our 2020 areas of focus. Again, some of these have really been going through the timeline and the time frame, have been things that we have been working on for multiple years. Obviously, we can't boil the ocean. We want to make sure to stay very focused on the things that we can accomplish. So the first, recruitment, right? Ensuring that we are hiring LGBT plus employees at all levels of the organization, as well as, promotion of existing LGBT plus employees within our space. And we've done that through multiple items and ways. Certainly things like Out and Equals Career Fair and some other places on down the line. Development and retention. This is the Support Me metric we have created within the Executive Leadership Council and LGBT plus sponsor and protege program. So what you may think of as a mentorship program, but this has really been sponsorship of that sort of mid-level LGBT plus talent. How do we then sponsor those individuals to get them to an executive level? We've had some amazing success with that as we have paired people together for the past 3 years. That didn't go into place until the second year of our council, but continues to today. Engagement and representation, right? Just making sure that we are indeed included as we are talking through any and all of our items, making sure that for things like supplier diversity, that LGBT plus is included on through those ranks. And then finally, one thing that I think is a constant topic in almost every panel session, you'll see it out in Equal, or you've ever seen it out in Equal, or in any LGBT plus space, which is self-identification, right? How do we continue down this path that our LGBT plus employees are identifying themselves and disclosing that they are LGBT plus, and what does that look like, and how are we using that information? So we can go to the next slide, Michelle. Thank you. And so really, this is just a graphic to show you, we came up with this idea, we kicked it off, it has gone and continued to mature over time, and getting to a place now where we feel very stable and solidified in what we've been able to do. We've been able to establish ourselves as a presence and where we are headed here. And this is the roadmap that we would suggest for all of you, really starting with that, kicking it off, and then growing into what else this means. So I'll pause there. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle for our next, I think Mike actually, sorry about that, for our next section, and then we'll go from there. I'll look at the chat as well. I know a few questions were coming across, so we'll look at that as we're going through.
Hey Shelley, let's just, before we go to Mike, let's pause and I love to give a little bit of practical advice all the way through, especially since Zach and I can give the sort of HR side of things as well as the EN and LGBT plus side of things. So as someone who works in D&I, let me give you sort of the behind the curtains look of, what goes on when you as an employee network leader or an LGBT plus executive, might come to your company and say, hey, I heard this presentation from Bank of America and Out and Equal. They have this LGBT plus executive council. Wouldn't that be a great thing for us to do? So that's sort of you at the ideation stage. A couple of quick tips there is, we have one, I know JP has one, and I'm sure throughout Equal you could figure out that there's a couple of other companies that have these executive type forums, councils, commissions, whatever they may call. So at your ideation stage, grab a couple of companies that are doing it already and ask them for some hints and tips, like we're doing with this session today. Look at the sort of objective, the mission, the charter that Shelley just shared, and think about, okay, how would that apply or change for my company? And just start to set out, your kind of business case almost, or your roadmap for your company, which is, okay, I have the idea. I know some other companies that are doing this and who are saying they're having success. ask those other companies, hey, what 2 or 3 things have happened as a result of having an LGBT plus executive council or executive group of some fashion, so that then straight away you've got some success, some proof points to go back to your team with. And then start to think about, again, at the ideation phase, just like Shelley and David did, get a couple of executives together, and get their input early on and get them together early on virtually to figure out, what should it look like and could it look like for your company. And then from there you can kick off. And I was just looking at the poll that some of you filled in sort of in the lobby before you joined, and we've got a good number of LGBT plus, regional, global and chapter leaders are members. So there's lots of people who are with us today who are obviously thinking it might be great to have an executive forum. Maybe I'm not going to be part of that forum today, but more so thinking about it from the EN lens, which is phenomenal because, as you'll hear later from Zach, he again represents both our EN, he's one of our co-chairs of the employee network for us, and he's a member of our executive council, and the journeys definitely came together very deliberately. So another thing that I would say straight from the beginning, and we got a question on, is yes, we are connected to the LGBT plus employee network, which is called Pride at Bank of America. And very strategically so. So whoever our co-chairs of our Pride employee network are also sit on our executive council, regardless of level and so on. So that we're very deliberate that they sit at the council, and indeed they sit on our small group steering committee, so that they can help steer and guide and make sure that we're always complementing each other. So we'll talk more about that when we get to structure, but we talked about kickoff, and then you'll hear lots more ideas when you get to the third stage in the roadmap. But there's just a couple of quick practical tips as we keep going.
Thanks, Michelle. All right, let's talk a little bit about the organization and how it's been established and how it's been evolved. So you've heard a couple of statements about the steering council, which has been there since the inception when we had 10 members. And we now have 12 members. The 2 co-chairs you've heard from, Shelley and Michelle already. We do have 10 additional members, including myself as COO. As Michelle just mentioned, the co-chairs of the employee network. And then we make sure we want to represent key initiatives that we have. So we do have someone who is a member from our transgender community as well to make sure that that voice is heard. The council membership looks across a span of diversity elements. Not only including LGBT, but also race, geography, line of business. We want to make sure we're being representative because the steering council should be representing the council as a whole. So these are the 12 people we have on the council today. Note that the co-chairs do spend 4 years in their role, and after 4 years, it's mandatory they move into an emeritus status. We want to keep transitioning the leadership, but we also want to hold on to that leadership for at least a year after the transition to make sure that we still hear that voice. Let's move to the next slide. It would not be an LGBT event at Out Equal if I didn't have a rainbow somewhere. So you'll see here we have our rainbow map. The very beginning, we had 32 out leaders across 11 locations. You'll see them here. From the beginning, and this is true today, as you'll see on the next slide, we've had the majority of our membership in New York City and in California. Let's go to, oh, you're already on the next slide, 81, okay. So today we have 81 out leaders across 19 locations. Much of that growth has happened in New York City, and in, interestingly enough, well, Charlotte, because those are our primary employee hubs. We've also seen growth that's been happening consistently outside of the US, where we have 13 people now, most of them in the UK. We have 13 members as well that have been added to the council in 2020. That's fairly consistent. We see like a 15 to 20 per year growth in terms of our council members. For the past few months, just to give you some additional statistics, much of the growth, as I mentioned, was in New York, but a lot of it has been in specific areas that are outside some of the normal type of positions at the bank. So things like media relations, strategy, business support executives have been really where a lot of our growth has been in the past year. So the other thing we've started to see is you see a lot of the ones on the map. We're starting to see membership in cities where we may have, for instance, a Merrill Lynch presence, but not a very strong central presence, like Minnesota, and states like that. So that has been something that's been very interesting in the last couple of years. And on the slides, you didn't probably catch it when we went through the 12 members, but we do have a member of our 12 who is from actually Minnesota. For the purposes, we want to make sure we're embracing the messaging that's coming from sites where we may not have a big footprint. That's important for us as well. So all those things are taken into consideration as we go through the formation of the steering council. Okay. I think that was everything I had on these couple of slides, and then I think I'm passing it now to Zach.
Sure, thank you, Michael, that was great. We also wanted to provide you with sort of laying the foundation. And I think these next couple of minutes we're going to spend on, so how do we set an executive council up? First and foremost, as both Shelley and Michael have alluded to, we've got to find our members, right? And so at the bank, we have a band system where our executives are in a certain band, have a certain title, and so we were able to quickly identify folks and have people opt in. We did a marketing campaign. We used word of mouth, I would say. When I joined the bank 4 years ago, it was part of my orientation to make sure that I get onto the executive council, which was awesome, and then subsequently joined the steering committee. I think it's really important here to also identify ways that people might not have exposure to, or different ways of connecting with folks that belong to multiple groups, working with the different enterprise networks or colleague groups like BPG, or sort of Black African American group, or the Latin group, and really reaching out to them and saying, hey, are there LGBT folks in your employee network that are executives that may be interested in joining an LGBT executive group? So I think this whole notion of intersectionality that is a real big focus for Out and Equal this year, I think is very important when we're trying to find members to support the executive council. We've all been on teams and councils that want to boil the ocean and take on more things than reality permits. Our recommendation suggestion is focus on the critical few, really identify sort of those impactful areas to work on, and really follow the passion. I think, you know, when you hear hire me, support me, include me, see me, those all resonate as LGBT executives, and I mean, it just as LGBT people, every single one of those resonates, and we really wanted to build on that passion, on that drive. So when one does have the passion and drive, one is going to get involved, and one is going to contribute in a meaningful way. Gain consensus, right? That's our sort of our next recommendation suggestion on how to build it is, you know, talk to people, make sure that there is alignment with your C-suite and administrative support, and have discussions with other constituents, with other executives at the bank. You know, I think one thing that I would also suggest, and we had a discussion on this about Michael and I, around how does this group also support the business? How does this group grow the business? And I think that that's a really key thing as well, because the business is going to come to us for LGBT matters, and I think that that's really important to also build into your plan to set up an executive council at the bank. And you know, and a comment around how does the employee network or the chapters work with the executive council. I think it's a symbiotic relationship. Like Michelle said, the co-chairs sit on the steering committee, and then, you know, as we move forward, I really think that there's going to be more collaboration and alignment with the executive council, because there is a strategic focus, and that is completely aligned with what the chapters are doing at the local level. So I think I'm passing it over to Michelle to expand on more of the strategic focus and talk about our priorities.
Thank you, Zach. Okay, let me just double click on a couple of these things, again, just from a kind of D&I person perspective as well. So we've talked a lot about self-ID during this panel. So let me just take a step back and say we actually don't use self-ID in the sense that we all talk about it to identify people to join this LGBT plus Executive Leadership Council. So here's how, there's a couple of things. We do have self-ID at Bank of America, and we've talked about it for many years at Out and Equal. And it's something that we continue to get more and more sophisticated with and think about how we use it in more and more impactful ways. So we do have self-identification around LGBT plus and other areas of diversity. But how we do that with the council, so again, whether you have self-ID or not, here's how we did it in, you know, kind of one route. We started with who we knew, right? So Shelley and David met each other and knew that they were both senior executives at the company, and were both LGBT plus. And then guess what? You know, they knew one more person, that person knew one more person. It sounds silly, but it was honestly that simple for us. You know, in a company of our size, if we can do it just slowly and organically, then so can you. Additionally, we do have, through our ally portal, we decided, as well as having allies, and again, we've got lots of sessions via Out and Equal over the years about the ally portal. But through that portal, you can become an ally to our LGBT plus community, or you can be out at work. So what we did do is, as we saw executive types of titles, right, come on the out at work portal, we would then, you know, if one of us was in the same, you know, geography or the same business as that leader, reach out and say, hey, we have this LGBT plus executive council. Here's what we do. Here's who we are. Would you like to join? So it was very much individual leaders reaching out to one another. So very simple, and it doesn't need, you know, any sensitive HR data like self-ID. It's just about humans connecting with each other. And again, as we mentioned previously, you as employee network leaders could be the ones that say, hey, we like to have an executive council because we like the idea that those executives could then work for us in the employee network. And we know some executives because they're our executive sponsors. So you could even sort of be the catalyst and ask them to get together and think about what this could mean across other executives. So as everybody's mentioned, we decided to have 4 key focus areas because we really wanted to have impact. And one of the polls that we put at the start was, mainly because I love Hamilton as well, as many of us do, you know, what do you want executives to do for you in the room where it happens? And we think a lot about that question. And I think every executive, every employee network leader, every member of a company, you know, that we're all privileged to be part of has to think about that. You know, when I'm in the room where it happens, who am I representing? How am I representing? And what am I asking for? And how am I going to make things, you know, better and different and even more inclusive by being in that room and having that seat at the table? So for us, we said, okay, well, let's think about these 4 key areas and what could we do? So with Hire Me, we said, we think we have a great inclusive culture. We think this is a great place to work as LGBT plus people. You know, we would welcome other LGBT plus people to have the experiences we're having. So let's do more to really sponsor and support LGBT plus talent to find its way to Bank of America. So that was Hire Me, you know, recruitment strategy, executives going to events, thinking about, you know, how could we speak with our HR professionals that are connecting with LGBT plus teammates? How could we talk more around gender diversity and transgender and people who identify as non-binary and all the amazing parts of our community, so that we were being really thoughtful as LGBT plus executives to bring you know, all of our teammates along and really represent our company. So that was Hire Me. So hey, think we have a great place to work. Let's, you know, bring more people along. And then in terms of, whoops, oh, the millennial's gone wrong. see. I don't know how I ended up in charge of this, just so you know.
I can still hear you loud and clear, Michelle.
Okay. Then in terms of support me, we didn't want the council just to be for other people. So we take our responsibility seriously. We want to represent everybody, including all of you, our LGBT plus teammates from across corporate America and across the globe, very seriously in that room where it happens. But we also wanted to support each other and support, the people who could come next. So we were focused on how do we grow the council? So how do we have more and more executives that become part of the council? How do we talk about and brand and market the council more? And we also created an LGBT plus development program. So again, something probably that one of the things we're most proud of, and we could definitely connect and talk more about, was we decided that since we had this group of LGBT plus executives, let's put them to work, right? To use the name of the session. So we asked all the executives who were on the council to commit to being a sponsor to someone who is in the sort of middle of their career and starting to really rise and continue in their career. And we put together, with the help of our colleagues in HR, but really very much volunteer based. It wasn't an official program at first. Some curriculum based on information we already had as a company. And then these executives who were willing to spend time and engage and sponsor LGBT plus teammates. And we created an LGBT plus development program where we sponsor, we engage, and we give our mid-level teammates development experiences, activities, and access to executives regularly and executive speakers. So that development program has been hugely successful, and we've seen many more executives every year during the council who actually used to be members of the development program. And one of my favorite things is that actually the person that I was paired with the first year we ran the program is actually now on the steering committee of the LGBT plus Executive Council. So was just at that cusp of getting her executive role, and through nothing to do with me, but all her, she did get that role, and ultimately then joined the council and has now become a sponsor herself. So it's great to have that focus on playing it forward. And then the other thing that we've been really focused on as LGBT plus representatives, and Zach alluded to it as well, is we have to be inclusive and we have to be intentional about our intersectionality. And unfortunately, there are not many transgender executives in corporate America today. There's not enough. But we can all do more to increase the number of transgender people who are in C-suite or executive positions. So first, we, as I think Mike mentioned, did include very deliberately someone who's not technically an executive, but to be really thoughtful and inclusive and deliberate, we have a transgender person who's part of our steering committee. So to deliberately ensure that as LGBT plus executives who are setting the direction for the council, we have the view and the voice of transgender teammates at that table, at that room where it happens. So we did that, but we also decided that we'll have this LGBT plus development program, and we have now an LGBT plus summit where usually our executives get together in person, but this year obviously we got together virtually. Hugely engaging, inspiring, we have speakers. It's a chance for us all to get together to set the strategy and to connect with each other. And we said, well, wait a minute, here's another moment that matters for LGBT plus executives. If we have a summit, the LGBT plus executives, but yet we don't have an out at work transgender executive right now, we're letting our transgender teammates down as executives, because where are they? They're not in the room. And that's unacceptable to us. Our culture of inclusion says that that's not who we are at Bank of America. So the Executive Council then sponsored a transgender summit where we could have all our out at work transgender teammates come be part of that LGBT plus summit. And honestly, I think it's one of the kind of handful of things I'm most proud of having achieved is the fact that we have that summit as, partly responsible of the advocacy of this council saying, no, we want our transgender teammates at our summit with us. And let's have, a focused summit where we, grow and develop and engage and inspire our transgender teammates so that, there's more transgender folks, in future summits who are part of the LGBT track, executive track as well. So that has been, kind of hugely important to us, and the support me is, let's support each other, let's do development, let's, think about pulling the next generation of executives up, but let's also be thoughtful around the whole community as well. And then Around Include Me, we've definitely focused on our ally program and connecting with our LGBT plus councils, thinking about, how can we be very deliberate as LGBT plus leaders in our local markets. So for example, in Charlotte, a couple of the executives who are part of the council partnered together with our employee network very deliberately. And we held a workplace summit, like a little mini Out and Equal that actually Out and Equal were part of. And it was just very focused on North Carolina and some of the specific opportunities we have there, and bringing together lots of perspectives and some great not-for-profit partners like Out and Equal to talk about how do you become a more LGBT plus inclusive employer in North Carolina, and that was very much a partnership between the employee network and people who are executives on the council. So we're always looking for those partnership opportunities. And I think that's one of the key things that can happen when you have a council like this. And then we talk about self-ID a couple of times. So See Me, we do have self-ID data. We do collect LGBT plus as part of our self-identification campaigns. But one of the big things that our council has been focused on is how do we ask our company to do more with that information and to utilize it in more ways that will be impactful for our LGBT plus teammates. So that's something that we've been really advocating for and sponsoring this year, and are pleased to be seeing a lot of progress and a lot of partnership with our other executives across the C-suite on. So more to come on that one, but really exciting progress because again, we were able to escalate issues and ask for some help there. All right, keys to success. So team, let's make this a bit more of a panel. Shelley, what are some of the things that you think have been pretty critical to why we've been successful as an LGBT plus council that's on this page, and that, ultimately as well, are other ideas that you think are worth the team thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main things that have really, and we've touched on so many of them, but really has been this connectivity between our council members, where folks are, almost seeking out, come into contact at an event or through the day job or through something, networking, where you sort of realize that this person is out at work, but isn't a member of the council and, maybe doesn't know about it for whatever reason, and how tremendously that has built our membership base, right? I mean, we have, over tripled in membership for the Executive Council itself since inception. And it really has been that, as you mentioned, Michelle, right? That tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend that continues to grow over time. And I think that's really where it has where it started. We're not outing anybody. We're not making anybody uncomfortable. We have, had folks that have come to us and said, I don't know that I'm ready to be out or ready to be out in this capacity or in this forum. So, sort of tell me why or why not. And we've had some of those conversations, and really, leaving it to the individual, as we all know here on this panel, and certainly listening to this, where somebody is at the moment. And what that means to them and where they are and what they're ready to do. So I think that has, that's helped tremendously. And just the connectivity, I mean, just the idea of being part of something larger than yourself. It's amazing. Some of the other pieces that have come through this, where many of the executives on the executive councils are executive sponsors of employee networks and those things. And oh, hey, we want to do a mentorship program in San Francisco. Let me get with the folks in New York who I know are doing a fabulous mentorship program and model it off of them. And just, that continued connectivity over time, I think, has really been what has helped drive us.
And Shelley, one of my favorite sort of ideas or keys to success here is the employee network integration. And Zach will talk about this in a minute, but I think it's important for us to be super clear, especially to our LGBT plus employee network, and we really were. One, we brought them along on the journey with them, really deliberately, as we mentioned, having the chairs involved constantly. And then what we also do is now, Shelley and I, as the co-chairs, meet with the leadership team of the employee network regularly as well, and we just share, here's what the council's up to, here's what we're thinking about doing next. what have you guys got going on? Okay, how could we help you with that? Or, oh, okay, we saw this opportunity. Is this a gap and should we fill it, or did you have a plan for it? And we really have that active dialogue very deliberately and very regularly, because the last thing I would ever want, and I know all of us on the panel and in the council would ever want, is for people to say, oh, well, I'll be part of the executive council instead of the employee network. No, unacceptable. The whole point is that we are executives catalyzing the employee network, helping the employee network, removing barriers for the employee network, sponsoring the employee network. And we are very deliberate and constant with that message, because we're here to help, and the employee network is there to connect all of our teammates. We're just a subset of that, really, to give our executives a chance to have that connectivity to each other. Zach, what would you add there? Because I really think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, beautifully said. I think it's so important that that we are connected. As Michelle pointed out, the three of us co-chairs sit on the Executive Council Steering Committee, so we know what the Executive Council is doing, and we also find ways of plugging in and supporting the Executive Council. I think that there is sponsorship here, there's mentorship here. That's a really great opportunity for our work streams at the chapter levels to partner with executive council members. And so I absolutely agree with you and support the fact that we would never want sort of two directions, you know, the executive council going this way and the chapters going that way. That's definitely not in line with any of our values or core workings at the bank. So I think that's really important. Open communication, collaboration, all those wonderful C words.
And hey, Mike, not for nothing, but probably our favorite thing on this page, Shelley and I, is the COO role. So we didn't have a COO or a Chief Operating Officer for the council when it was in its early stages as it was forming, because it was small and it was easy to manage, and it was kind of the work it was doing was smaller as well. But as we've grown, I think one of the most critical parts of our success has been having the COO role, which is you. So would you just tell everybody that's listening a little bit more about the role you play? Why you play it? Like, why were you interested in this role within the council, and kind of how you think that kind of forum or role could work for them in their companies?
Yeah, so most of my career has been in what we call business support. What business support is working with senior leadership in terms of setting strategy, managing communications, those types of things. So it's a very good fit with my skill sets. A day in the life of me as a COO can be a variety of different things. We have the steering council meets monthly. I'm responsible for agenda, content, directions, keeping track of where we are in the year and what needs to be accomplished on the strategic plan. And by the way, just going back quickly to what Zach was talking about, the employee network and the executive council developed the strategic plan together so that there is commonality. A lot of the executive part of it is setting the strategy, communication, fostering that. And the employee networks, I always call them the hearts and hands, right? So they have the ability to help support the execute. And then we get to partner executives with employee network members for their development and kind of informal mentoring, right? Or informal support. But I get to do really cool stuff too. Like we've been readdressing kind of, how we select the board at the bank and different things to make sure that we're looking at all dimensions of intersectionality, not just LGBT, but all dimensions, right? So I have opportunities for that. The other thing I do is I get to be involved in every one of these work streams we're talking about. And one in particular to me that's important, that's been very touching to me, is the transgender community. And I'll talk a little more about that later in some of the Q&A and some of the discussion. But I think using the skills you have in your day job, and you have to find someone for the CEO role who's very passionate, because honestly, it's an addition to your day job. I have a very busy day job. A lot of the COO work becomes an evening and weekends thing. But I find because it's something I'm passionate about and I see the result of the effort and the impact, that it's something very meaningful to me, and it's actually kind of become a hobby. after hours to work on that type of work. So I'd say making a good COO requires someone who has organizational skills, communication skills, some level of strategic planning to help build the strategy. Once a year, by the way, we get together with the employee network as well and get in a room and talk about the strategy. And as we talked about at the beginning of the call, strategy evolves versus starting with a blank sheet of paper. So helping to do that, and my background in strategic planning from many years ago helps me to achieve that type of work as well.
Thank you, Mike. So just before we jump into, and we're going to do Q&A in a second, but so just to finish that sort of strategic setup, if you like, of how could you set up the council, I think the roles we found most critical is have co-chairs, and ideally have, you know, gender and other diversity in those co-chairs. And we did have gender diversity before then. It just so happened that Shelley and I were the two right leaders for right now, but we'll be very mindful as we succession plan to be more diverse than two white women in our next co-chair roles selections. And then we have co-chairs. We have the Mike COO role. Clearly a coup d'etat for us, could not do it without Mike, absolutely. So I would definitely say those three are critical roles. The fourth I would say is the employee network integration. So you've got your co-chairs, your COO, and then your employee network integration. And then from there, we got big enough that we needed a steering committee. You could sort of just start with that as your mini sort of management team for the council. We got big enough, we needed a steering committee. And what we again deliberately did is we looked to council membership and we talked to people who were most active in their community and their business, and also with the employee network, and tried to get people from across our lines of business, and also geographically diverse as well, because again, we're a global executive council. So it's important to us to have people that have lived and worked in different parts of the world and who currently live and work in different parts of the world, so that we can really represent or in a broad group of diverse leaders. So that's our structure. And then we have the overall council itself. The other thing that you see here is an annual face-to-face. Obviously this year, not what we did for all the right reasons, but having regular connect points for the full council, because the steering committee meets once a month. So we're obviously well connected. We talk to each other regularly. We've all become very much as friends as well as colleagues. And then we do the same thing with the full council, all 80 plus members. We aim to do a quarterly event where we either have, kind of open dialogue or a speaker or a topic that's interesting to our executives, or, bring some of our most senior leaders to come share and listen to our executives. So we've been, very lucky through the council to stay connected. So you've all been doing a wonderful job of using the chat to ask questions. And I think that's actually probably most simple. But just for anyone that hasn't found it yet, if you hover your, I don't know what that is, a mouse, an icon, I guess, above the black bar at the top, you'll see a more. If you click more, there you can then hit chat, and a chat panel comes up, and you can, as many of you have, thank you, just type in questions for us. We'd love to move now to a Q&A where we hear from you and answer questions that we might not have addressed just yet. So as you're all typing some more, let's jump to our first question around examples where the council has provided community engagement. So community engagement examples from the council. So Zach, why don't we go to you first and talk about some of the things that you've helped via the council from a community engagement perspective?
So absolutely, the executive council does get involved in community, and I think really sort of has the conversation from an enterprise perspective, what fits with the core mandates of the organization, what organizations do we want to support from a national perspective, international perspective, and what are the key areas of focus. So we have partnerships with Out and Equal is an excellent example of a titanium sponsorship. We have been, and it's not about writing the check, it's about creating impactful programs, creating programs that really disrupt the current environment of not having enough people around the table at the C-suite that are LGBT or that self-identify as LGBT. And to Michelle's point of how do we get more executive transgender colleagues across not just our company, across the environment. So we're launching, once we can start meeting face to face, we're launching a fantastic program Without an Equal to really develop that next level of executives, and that leadership program hopefully will be launched in the next year. But I think that is an excellent example where the executive council came together and said, we really need to not just support Out and Equal, but really create opportunities for other executives to grow and build other executives. And so I think that's a really great example, Michelle, of how the executive council has taken that relationship with Out and Equal to that next level, and being Titanium sponsors and really setting and impacting sort of the work environment and within our country and around the world.
And
I can go on to other sponsorships. We also sponsor the Trevor Project. We sponsor SAGE nationally, and so there are, and we're in the midst of also, and I think Michael can speak to this, supporting transgender in the workplace organizations that really work in and are aligned to the Executive Council's strategic focus.
Love it. Hey, let's jump, because I've seen a couple of questions come in about just really people looking for just real practical advice as employee network leaders around how to engage executives as executive sponsors, or just generally how to get executives to help. So I'll kick us off, and then we'd love everybody to give their sort of one or two pieces of advice. So my key thing would be get time. So executives struggle with time management in general, as we'll all tell you as we're running about making sure we were on this early, hence you enjoyed our funny start of like, are we live now? What's going on? So I would say the key sort of first thing is get some time with a couple of executives that you're interested in potentially engaging with, and just talk to them about what you're trying to achieve as an employee network and where you're having some difficulties. So just come to them and say, here's our objectives, here's why we think what we're trying to do is important, but here's some things we're struggling with. Maybe it's membership engagement, maybe it's, getting speakers, maybe it's, having enough people, participate in events, maybe it's topics, whatever it is that your particular chapter or overall network is struggling with, just take those kind of challenges to the sponsor. And then ideally, have things you want them to do. So what we do is we as a council have an executive sponsor as well. And what we always do is we take what we've kind of nicknamed now the menu or the shopping list to our sponsor. And we say, hey, here's our menu for you to choose from. You can have everything on the menu, or you can tell us there's two things that, you as an executive feel passionate about and have, the time and the capacity to do. So that would be my thing, sort of, grab time with the executive, get to know them, get them excited about what you're working on, tell them what the problems are, and then come up with a couple of ideas of how they could quickly add value for you. Because if you give executives things to do, we tend to do them. Where we struggle is where people say, oh, we'd like you to be our executive sponsor. And then we as executives say, okay, great, what do you need from us? And then Employee Network goes, I don't know, just be our executive sponsor. Kind of nobody wins in that scenario. So there's a couple of things for me. Shelley, you're laughing along. What would you add?
Yeah, definitely am laughing along on the time management and some other pieces. But no, I think, one of the best areas to engage your execs is to help you focus and help you stay focused on that mission. As Michelle mentioned, you want to come with an idea of what it is you can do and where you can help. But I think where you really need to use your executives are as that advisor for the ERG and then helping move the work along. So I think one of the things that happens at the beginning of every ERG or every resource group or any affinity group is there are so many issues, right? There's a laundry list, which is why you want to form the group to begin with. So I think really using your executive sponsor for, okay, look, these are the 27 things. We think these 3 are the most important, but what do you think and where are you? Because they also will have likely, depending upon what company you're in, they'll likely have a broader strategic vision of what's happening in your company, what's going to play, better in some areas than others, maybe some other work that's happening. So I would say, we talked a lot about and don't boil the ocean. That is literally the worst thing you could do, is to, have too many things to focus on and then nothing happens, versus, a few critical items where you're really making progress. Use your executive sponsor to really help you stay focused and decide what those priorities are and then where you are with them.
Kelly, you just said something critical there. So what you're saying is an executive could be a great sort of coach to the employee network, right? So they could come and say, we think we want to do these 10 things. And then what your exec sponsor could be doing is actually, as a leader, walking you through those 10 objectives and figuring out which 3 or 4 might actually be the most impactful for your network. So that's a great thing. You could say to any senior leader, hey, we as a group of teammates that are spending time on this objective of an employee network want to become more effective. That's what we want you to do as our executive sponsor. We want you to guide and advise us to become more effective and more impactful. I mean, what executive's going to say, that doesn't sound like a great use of my time. Right, Zach?
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle, I just want to talk about a concrete example is the talent acquisition team that I believe Shelley and Alex had asked me to help and to join. And I was not on the steering committee. I was not on the executive steering committee. I was not an enterprise co-chair. I was a member of the executive council. And the talent acquisition team, or the talent team within the employee network, was looking for some additional support, guidance, and partnership. I think that is an excellent example of where a couple of us executives joined that group and were able to make the connections that the folks on that team may not have had. So we had a diversity and inclusion recruiting group within talent acquisition. So now we're completely aligned as a result of that. There is a plan now where talent acquisition, when it goes out to, when it comes to Out and Equal, it will partner with our talent acquisition team within the LGBT plus EN and Executive Council. So that's a concrete example of the problem was talent acquisition. How do we infiltrate talent acquisition within the company to have some focus around LGBT recruiting? And we were able to sort of partner better, open some doors, make some introductions, and it's a great team now, and myself and Alex will continue to support them. So I think that's a concrete example. I think people are looking for how does this all work? But I think mentorship, opening doors, guidance, prioritizing, all of those things really come in handy when we have executive sponsors.
Great. And Shelley, I just saw another question come into the chat, so thank you for prompting our guests and teammates here around measurement and goals. So for the council, that's something that's really important, especially just as we mentioned, like all of you have an executive sponsor, we have an executive sponsor. So if we go to her and we say, oh, we think we had a good year, you can imagine what kind of response we'd get. Or really, Michelle, she wants to say, okay, well, tell me what your strategic objectives are as a council and tell me how you're going to measure them. So we measure things like the number of executives, we measure the people that participate in the development program and the success outcomes of that development program. We measure impact and satisfaction around key initiatives that we've driven as a council. We measure things that we've been able to do to help our employee network as executives, kind of opening those doors, walking alongside and partnering. So we definitely, for all of those, hire me, see me, include me, develop me, we come up with 2 or 3 key measurements that we can point back to. So that I think is always really good. And then anything else on measurement or goals? There's another couple of great questions coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I think just as far as measurement, it's got to be tied to what your priorities are and what you're looking at. And some of those, unfortunately, are, rather subjective as far as whether you're making progress on what those are or not. I mean, one of the things we've been measuring are, the talent that we're bringing into the council, what our membership numbers look like geographically, how we're dispersing, looking at things like supplier diversity and some other places. But some of the items we really, our development program, we obviously measure, and there's some pieces there. But some of the other pieces are really, it's more of a summary measurement because it is so subjective. We influenced a particular amicus brief within the company for something that was happening, out in the world versus actual true number measurement.
Yeah, and we had a great question that I'll grab before it jumps off screen about, we've talked a lot about, ways that the council sort of sponsors others and helps the EN and our executives that are, midway in their career, but what do we do for council members themselves? So through our annual summit, we always bring in speakers or development opportunities, executive coach type speakers where we do content to support the development of our executives very specifically. So we talked about there's 2 tracks at that summit. So we have an executive track and then still the transgender summit track as well right now. And again, hopefully by next year, we'll see more overlap of the 2. But there we bring in speakers, we put panels together and we do executive development with our executive development team that we give our executives who are part of the council access to. So we do very deliberate executive development activity through the summit. And then we try to sustain that through the year. So for example, we just had a sort of open forum council conversation and said, what would you like more of? And one of the things that we have decided to do is to have a panel around, leading at the next level. So we're proud that we have 3 teammates who are direct reports to members of our management team. So we don't have an out management team member just yet. So we don't have someone that reports to Brian Moynihan, our CEO, who's an out LGBT plus leader just yet. But we do have several teammates who are just a level below that. So very, very senior, lead huge teams and huge businesses. So we're going to ask those executives to come and talk about, what was it like to lead at that very next level? How did they get there? What were their success? What was their path? What would their advice be now that they're leading at that next stage in their career? So that's very specific for the execs themselves because that's the kind of, we don't have many executives at that C-suite level that we can hear from as we aspire to more. So having as many as we do at Bank of America, we're very lucky, and we're planning to ask them to share their experiences and here's how to do it and what to avoid with our executives.
Yeah, and I think also access to the management team as well, right? I think the council, for me, my first meeting, I was in the job for, I think, maybe 6 months. And here I am meeting, Brian Moynihan as an executive. And so that may not have happened, and which was, a great opportunity. And I think it's that whole reinforcement that there is support at the top. And I think that the executive council makes that happen. I think that's a real important point when it's this whole idea of CME. CME is not just about self-ID. CME is also about senior management coming and spending time with the executives to talk about what's on our minds and to hear from us. And really, it made a huge impact on me when 6 months into the role, I joined the executive council and sitting around having dinner with the CEO of the company.
I saw a great question for us all to answer about how to get executives excited and engaged about a new initiative. I think that's a great question. my simple answer, and I'd love everybody else's, is get them involved, and get them involved early. And to Shelley's earlier point, usually executives are, in different levels of conversation, and we get, different levels of information. So the tough thing for employee network leaders can be that sometimes they'll bring something to an executive and we'll say, well, actually, that's probably not the best thing to do right now. And that's so frustrating because sometimes we can't even tell you why, because we know something that's coming up, whether it be because of where we sit in the business or just some general senior leader meeting or messaging that we've heard, where we can guide and advise you this is not the right time for that initiative. But our job is also to say, but how about something else, right? Don't let us away with just saying no. So that would be a key tip is, engaging executives. And if you get a not right now or not the right thing, say, okay, no problem. What would you guide us to do that would have a similar outcome then? Because here's what we're trying to solve for. What else could we do that you as an executive could help us do? So I think engage us early, listen to our advice as much as you can. I know it's tough sometimes because we do tell you no, and then give us a job. So executives get excited when we have something to do. If you just come to us and say, hey, we're going to launch this new fun initiative, then we're sort of like, okay, very good. And then we're back to, the 55th email of the minute or the next meeting. Tell us what's exciting about it and tell us, hey, and I'd like you to be engaged in this way, or I'd like you to help us in this way. So put us to work, and you'll get more engagement. Shelley, Mike, Zach, what else would you add to that one? Because that's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the put us to work is the key piece, right? So, executives need to feel needed just like everybody else does. And if you tell us you need us, we're going to show up, and we're going to show up in a big way. So I think, what we talked about before is really that advising and that coaching, and being able to do that. And then I would also say, I mean, and obviously this depends upon the size of your company and other pieces, but if there's a way to put us in a competition with each other, like, let's have at it. If I can school Zach and Michelle and Mike in any way, about what's happening in San Francisco versus Charlotte or New York or LA, man, I'm going to be all over it and get my EN all over it, and certainly be part of that. So I think it's, one thing I always tell my son, right? The number one rule in our family is to have fun. I think you've got to have, element of fun with all this. You are talking about executives and you're talking about a different level within the organization. But there are real reasons why we do all of this. And it's clearly to help make people comfortable within, and making sure that you have the right policies in place, but it's also got to be engaging and fun along the way. And I think don't lose sight of that, and don't think that executives can't be a part of that.
I completely agree with that. And, in my EN co-chair role, it has really propelled me to have some real conversations, frank conversations with some executives where, we've had the conversation around, okay, what are you interested in? How can we engage you? And basically it's, okay, I've been in this role now for about 6 months. I've been at the company for 4 years. I'm not seeing you jump in and leaning into some of the issues that we're really tackling, some of these big issues. And so it's like Shelley said, call them out, but in a fun, kind of fun way. I've been blown away when I've gone to an executive with a specific ask and a specific problem, and asking them for help to come up with a solution, how just open and excited they are and jumping in with 2 feet. So I completely agree with what Michelle and Shelley have said.
Great questions here. And Shelley, you've got some direct experience of this one. People who are either restarting an employee network that sort of just died the flame of ERG death, or Zach and I can take one where, they've produced a great business case in their minds, but HR are sort of like, meh, like, okay, I hope you're having fun with your employee network. So we'll grab that one. Shelley, do you want to talk about, how do you sort of re-spark an employee network that has unfortunately not done so well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've shared, I live in San Francisco, and our employee network here covers all of Northern California. So the San Francisco Bay Area, the Silicon Valley area, even out to some of the Sacramento area. And, you know, there's probably 10,000 employees of our company within that space. And when I first became in this market, became active in this space, you know, our employee network wasn't really doing much. And I went to the co-chairs and I was like, what is happening? Like, I'm happy to sponsor this, but what is going on here? And the answer was, it's the Bay Area, nobody needs it. And I said, well, who told you that? And, you know, we continued these conversations, and it became clear that everybody had gotten very comfortable and complacent with where we were. And so we changed out some leadership roles. It took some time, and it took some, you know, different pieces. And I'm not, you know, telling you to change out. This is, you know, largely a volunteer job for a lot of people that are involved in this area. But I think it's more about really showing the need and what can be done. And that leads into, you know, the next question that Zach and Michelle will opine on a little bit, but is really showing that need and how it can make a huge difference in the area. And you've got to find your advocates, and you've got to be able to just keep pushing. Obviously, you want to do so in a respectful way, and it's going to make sense and with the right people. But you have to keep pushing, and you have to, you know, continue to show the business case and what's there. And we took what was a very, you know, was dying a very slow, painful death of an employee network to the most active employee network we've got in the San Francisco Bay Area. And frankly, a lot of it was just due to leadership change and just excitement and passion around that, which then continue to feed on this path as we continue to talk about one friend, tell somebody else, tell somebody else, tell somebody else, and you just continue to grow over that time.
All right, Zach.
Yeah, so I think the HR one, I mean, it's always tough, right? HR has so much power. We let HR have so much power, but, you know, I think it's important. I think it comes down to fundamentally in your inside, if your little voice in there is saying, this is the right thing to do, we need to move this forward, then it's be persistent, look for your allies, look for your advocates, and sometimes have your advocates speak for yourself, for you. Have advocates within HR, have advocates at senior level management. This is where the executive team comes into play. If you have those relationships, leverage those relationships. I'm assuming that this person is asking to set up an LGBT EN, and there are other ENs, employee networks at the company. And so not having an LGBT one is a huge miss, and especially in today's environment. You know, Michelle might smack me at this. Michelle and I work on the same team, but I am a big advocate for being a disruptor. This is the time to disrupt. We need to disrupt the status quo within the parameters of your company's policies and procedures, being respectful. But I think that it's an opportunity for change, and it's an opportunity for really moving the needle in many of these conversations. And I think that one of the things that's really key is this whole conversation around intersectionality. So if there is a Latin American organization or a women's group or a Black group, it's important to articulate the intersectionality of being LGBT+. Michelle?
No, right, yeah, those are great points, Zach. I think I would add, like we call employee networks, you know, business resource groups, employee, like there's a inherent sort of resource or sort of symbiotic nature to employee networks. So that would be my coaching is, have a look again and grab your executive sponsor. If you don't have one, you know, get a couple of executives to kind of be that coach, that guide. Also get some people in HR as well, because again, if you're not getting the buy-in from HR, grab them. I always, you know, love to say, if you don't like it, then help fix it. So kind of same thing here, and say, let's look at, you know, what are our objectives, what we're trying to do here, and then let's look at the companies, and then let's say, you know, how do the two align, and how are we as an employee network trying to help the company in, you know, 4 or 5 key ways. and just be really deliberate with saying, okay, you say you want to hire, you know, this type of talent. Okay, well, we're going to help with that in these ways. You say you want, you know, people to feel more engaged and be more productive in you know, this new virtual environment. Okay, well, we're going to help with that. So, you know, figure out the 3 or 4 ways that the company, you know, could do with your help as an employee network. Partner with other employee networks, to Zach's point, but grab the people who maybe aren't as enthusiastic about what you're doing and ask them to help you fix it. So, you know, get that tough coaching from them, because again, there's probably a reason. And we try actually not to say no in HR, and we try to be very excited about things. It just tends to be that there's usually some reason that we are, you know, coaching or advising otherwise. So grab us and figure out what's going on, and get a couple of HR folks to help you there. I also love clients. So everybody has clients, right? Even in HR, we have clients, but every company has a client. Every company exists for a purpose that either they have competitors or peers in, and I see some great ideas about peer or competitor benchmarks here, but also every company has clients or customers. So again, how could you, you know, connect there and say, hey, you know, here's 3 things that is important to our clients or our customers. And again, here's how the employee network is furthering those goals. And you'll be, you know, hopefully then delighted by how much further you get with support. We've not got long. I guess we've got like 9 minutes left. So let's grab another couple of questions, or if there's anything that we haven't told you about in terms of, you know, how we started our executive council, how we put it to work, how we hope executives could be helpful to you and your company and your employee network. You know, we'd love you to guide us on, you know, the last 9 minutes and, you know, where you'd like us to go.
And while we're waiting for that, one of the questions that came through was, are all of our executives out? And so what I will say is everybody on the council, with the exception of one member who's a co-chair of the EN that is a very, very active ally that sits in that role because of her role as co-chair on the EN, everybody is out. That was very important to us when we were forming, that everybody you know, does self-identify on. We have a separate engagement portal for ally and out of work. So we have, you know, asked that everybody definitely identifies before becoming a part of the council. So just wanted to answer that question.
And Shelley, I saw a question from Matt who was asking about the percentage of leadership that's part of the council. So I would say, and Mike, you'll have the exact number, but I'd say sort of 90+% of the out of work executives that, again, have chosen to say they're out of work, not self-identification data, but the visible, anybody in the company can see it data, are part of the council. And Mike has done a great job asking the other like 5, you know, kind of, hey, you know, do you know about us? Would you like to be part of it? And really the only reason they're not participating is capacity constraints, you know, with life and work and other things that they were like, just, you know, it sounds like you all have a great time and that you're doing great work, but right now, not so much for me, you know, give me a call next year. So that's the only reason we've heard from executives not to participate, is just time and them seeing it as another, you know, sort of meeting and obligation that they want to make sure that they could actually do justice to, versus, you know, being part of the council and then never being able to attend.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I'm not sure if Matt's trying to hit on this point as well, as percentage of our total leadership being LGBT leadership, and I could talk a little bit about that as well. We know we're not at the percentage we should be. Part of the problem is honestly getting through all the noise of what happens around the bank. And as Michelle hinted earlier on about word of mouth, that's really how we find people, either through that or through signing up on the Ally portal. But you've got 200,000 people in this company. I'm sure some of you who are in larger companies like that. The amount of noise that comes out, especially during Pride Month, it's hard to get people to, despite messaging we put out, to be aware we exist. Because I will talk to people who we find who have been with the bank 5-10 years and they have no idea we existed. So that's probably our biggest challenge, to get into the numbers where we want to be. However, we still believe there are leaders out there that we haven't reached.
Great. Well, listen, we've only got a few minutes left, so let's close with just one last piece of advice from each of our panel members. So Zach, let's go to you first.
Sure. I mean, I think it's, we all work for a company. It's a holistic picture here. We're all in this together. We know what our values are at the company. We know what the direction is. It's about working together and collaborating.
Great. Shelley?
Don't think you can't do it. I mean, before I joined the executive council, I had decided my job was too busy and volunteer work was something of the past, and the relatively new parent and other things happening in life. And all of this happened, and it's amazing how much this work really helps propel your career, helps engagement within the company, helps you within all of the different employee networks. So I think it is just know that being involved and taking that extra step, while it's extra work, reaps benefits that are triple fold what you could ever put into it.
Mike?
Grow in an area where you don't have knowledge, right? I am a white gay male. There's a lot of privilege with that. And about 9 years ago, it was actually at an Out and Equal Summit, I started to get to know more about the transgender community. And it struck a chord with me. And I started to seek out knowledge and learning and speak to transgender employees at the bank, many of whom I call my friends now. And that has put me on a particularly passionate path. We didn't talk too much about a nonprofit we have just formed with a partnership about trying to hire more people who are transgender, particularly transgender women of color, from entry level through management positions. That is my passion right now, and for the last 2 years. That was something 5 years ago I didn't know much about.
I love that. Thank you, Mike. No, see, now I want to do two things, but I'll stick to my own rules. Put your executives to work. I'll close where we started. We honestly want to be put to work. But we're just not sitting about waiting for you to call us. So put us to work, call us, tell us what you want us to do, make it easy for us, put meetings on the calendar, work with our executive assistants or admins or whoever we have to help us to get us what we need to be successful for you. Tell us if we're not being successful. So, it would be perfectly fine as employee network leaders to say to your executive sponsor, hey, I'd like you to do a yearly performance review of us and how we're doing as co-chairs, and would you mind if we give you one as our executive sponsor? Now, obviously be politically savvy about how you do that. Don't, kind of go too far, but you can give your executive sponsor, hey, here's 3 things that you're really doing well for us and that we really appreciate, and here's 2 things we need more of you. So I would just go back to where we started. Put your executives to work, make it easy for us, and focus on how we can help you and each other.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for spending almost 90 minutes with us today. We appreciate you. We hope you all felt a sense of belonging here. We're really passionate about the fact that our executive council really helped our LGBT plus executives find that belonging at Bank of America. We're proud to be part of Out and Equal, and as you can all hear, we're very proud to work for Bank of America. Check us out at the virtual booth. We have a very cool virtual booth that our teammates done a great job on, and unfortunately you'll hear more of my accent if you go there, because the video that Zach and I are in along with a couple of other teammates. So go check out our virtual booth, and hey, if you don't work for us today, you're welcome anytime. Give us a call.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.